If the Utah Utes want any shot at the college football playoff Big 12 title game, they need to not just win, but absolutely throttle the Kansas Jayhawks this weekend.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Huge shout out to our everydayers as well. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You can download the app today. My name is JT Wistrcill, excited to be joined by Ute Nation writer Matt Patton on today's show. Got to talk about transfer portal, just a week away. So who is going to be some of the guys to enter it? Maybe Isaac Wilson, and also why some guys should be careful to enter the portal based on what's happened in the past. But first, the biggest thing going on for Utah this week is not just a game against Kansas, but the fact that they are still mathematically in the running for a Big 12 title spot and college football playoff spot. It's not likely, Matt, that Utah is going to get in. You need a lot to happen. I talked about it a little bit yesterday. We could talk about it more here in a moment, but at the end of the day, if you're Utah, they're 12.5-point favorites over Kansas. Let's go on the road. Let's get one more dominant win. Look like one of the best teams in college football still, and just let the rest play out for it from there. But I would love it if this Utah team could be 10-2 while looking like one of the most dominant forces in college football for the most part of the season. But we won't talk about the level of dominance they didn't display against Kansas State. But this week, I think they got a chance to pick right back up to that dominant level with a struggling Kansas team. But you got to win and win big, in my opinion, Matt, if Utah wants any shot at anything postseason related of meaning outside of like your normal bowl games.
Well, yeah, in Utah, they got their scare out of the way against Kansas State, and they were able to go and still win while learning that you can't sleep on an opponent, even if they're a 500 team. And Kansas is another team. You can't sleep on them. It's going to be senior day for them. They've got this is the last game of Jalen Daniels' career, if he's even able to go, as he went down in the third quarter. So you got a really motivated team. They're fighting to get into a bowl. They're 5-6. They need one win to get into a bowl game. This is a team that's not going to want to lay down for Utah. And you're exactly right. If they want to have any chance at getting into that playoff, they've got to really impress a lot of people.
Well, they haven't impressed me on the season, and I think most people on the season, because this was a team a lot of us thought, Utah, Kansas, coming into this year, bunch of one-score losses last year. Let's see that flip this year, and they should be towards the top of the Big 12 standing. And they've underwhelmed once again. You know, their only wins in Big 12 play, West Virginia, UCF, Oklahoma State. Those are 3 of the 5 worst teams in the Big 12 right now. So they haven't been impressive. Like, yes, they've played Cincinnati close. At the time, we were surprised Cincinnati beat Kansas. Now we look back and we can say, well, you played Cincinnati close, but you were at home even in that. Got throttled by Tech. Got beat pretty good by Kansas State too, but we see that Kansas State team's capable of being okay. Gave Arizona a scare. Arizona's actually solid this year, but you just got beat pretty handedly by Iowa State. So I am curious to see what this team looks like coming this week. You mentioned Daniels. We'll see if he is good to go, but 2,300 yards for him on the year, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He has cut down on the turnovers, and he's still himself when it comes to running the football mostly. Maybe not quite as athletic, but still 370 yards there on the ground. They do desperately miss Devin Neal. They had a really good Big 12 back a year ago. He graduated, moved on. Their other backs are fine. A couple of solid pass catchers. A defense that's not remarkable. This is a very average Kansas team. That's why they're fighting for bowl eligibility. You look in the Big 12 conference, Kansas offensively and yards per game, 12th in the conference, yards per game against, they're 10th in the conference. So very average margins there. Is Utah team with their rushing attack, with the way Devin Dampier is playing. And I know he had some struggles throwing the ball, but came up late when it mattered most, right? I don't see why this Utah team shouldn't go in, take care of business this week, and at least handle their end of all the crazy things they need to have happen in order for them to get in the postseason party.
Oh, yeah, and they should absolutely take care of business. You look at this Kansas team, and just like you were talking about, very average and really bad in the spots that will hurt them the most against a Utah team like this, where their rush defense is terrible. Utah should be able to continue to run all over them like they have their last 4 opponents, and they're terrible in the red zone, both offensively and defense. They're at the bottom in the country nationally in red zone defense and in putting the ball into the end zone offensively. So it's just a team that just frankly, just isn't very good.
They're not. And Daniels has been sacked 17 times on the year. Of course, hate to see John Henry Daly out for the year. He was having a tremendous season, and wish him a speedy recovery as well as it relates just to next season, because he is such a guy it's easy to root for with how good he was this year too. But Utah have a chance to get after Daniels too. You mentioned they have the third worst rushing defense in the Big 12. The last time Utah played a team in the bottom three was Baylor, and we know how it went for this Utah ground game too. So Utah should be in a position to take care of business, but it is unfortunate, Matt, how many things they need to go their way. And I think the biggest reason I think it's going to be hard for Utah to make the Big 12 title game, and we're going to find out tomorrow, like where Utah ranks in the CFP, but we need West Virginia to beat Texas Tech. If Tech were to lose to West Virginia, outside of and maybe they still get in if they win the Big 12 title game, probably, right? But and I think they would. They'd still be one of the 4 highest ranked conference champs. But my gosh, if you lose to West Virginia, what that would do for your seeding, I don't see how West Virginia can beat a Tech team that is rolling. And I know West Virginia got a good win against Houston, but they've kind of tumbled back down to the bottom of the Big 12 pretty quickly after.
Yeah, it's highly unlikely, but you see, I think actually this game that Utah played against Kansas State, it just goes to prove that if one team is kind of taking the other team for granted and just kind of going, kind of walking through it, sleepwalking, as they say, anything can happen. Very unlikely. Yeah, I think West Virginia is something like a 20-point dog right now, but it could happen. So there's still a chance. And if not, you know what? I think Utah fans should still be excited, because Utah will be the most desired team for a bowl. And so outside of the playoff, it's not as exciting as it once was, but they would likely get a very good bowl matchup. And it'll be an exciting game. And I think if anybody would have said, hey, Utah is going to go 10-2 at the beginning of the season, people would have been quite excited. It's just, unfortunately, BYU and Texas Tech have done even better.
They have. It's just, the Cougars, man, I give them credit. They keep winning. I don't finding ways to win. I got some crap for saying that yesterday, but I'm sorry. When the other team misses 3 field goals, when they jump off sides on a key punt, when they drop an interception, give BYU a ton of credit. That defense, that run game, nasty. If I had a coach of the year vote, it would go to Sataki. But there's also been a ton of bounces that have gone the Cougars' way. Credit for them to capitalizing on that. And they have a chance to go to Arlington. So we'll see what happens with that, obviously. The one thing that's interesting, though, is we do have the college football rankings coming out later tonight, Matt. I actually do think Utah is going to drop. I don't think they should drop, but I feel like the committees continue to just love this Miami team. And now, granted, though, maybe they're a little scared of having Miami compared to Notre Dame, so maybe that's why they'd pull Miami back. But they moved Miami over Vandy just because Vandy was on a bye. So I'm a little worried that they're going to move Miami over us, and maybe even a Vandy, because they did look more impressive than a Utah team this last week, whose defense obviously was pretty poor. Do you expect Utah to remain where they are, or do you think they're going to tumble? Because we have seen the committee do this with teams.
The East Coast bias is very real. We see it all the time. I think absolutely. You look at Texas A&M, they had a situation that was far worse than Utah, that they were able to come back from a major deficit against a mid team, and they didn't really get penalized for it. But unfortunately, I think it'll be different with Utah, even though they didn't fall behind by what was it, 30 points or something, 27 points. I think, Utah at least was sticking in that game the whole way. They just, it was just a back and forth. But yeah, I think you'll see that. I think you'll see Miami probably jump Utah. But for Utah's chances to get into the college football playoff, it doesn't really matter if Miami does anyway, because they were, that ACC slot was probably going to steal, one of those top 12 spots anyway. And I expect Miami to win the ACC. So, and if they don't, then they'll probably fall back behind Utah again. So
can they get in the title game? I thought that was the big thing. I thought they were.
Oh yeah. I'd have to look at that. I think they still can, but I guess it does. I didn't think about that because of their losses. But so either way, I don't think even if Miami does, well, yeah, that's a good point.
We'll
you got me on that one. I forgot. Yeah, it's crazy that Miami, while they're what appears to be clearly the best team in the ACC, may not be able to go to the title game.
Don't lose to SMU and Louisville. I like Louisville and I like some things about SMU, but SMU's also lost to Wake, Baylor, and TCU this year. So that's where if you're the best class of the ACC, you got to find a way to win those games, and they haven't. But Utah this weekend, you need Oklahoma to somehow lose to a terrible LSU team that barely beat Western Kentucky. You need Who was the other one? Bama losing to Auburn, a little more realistic, but then again,
Did you see the
Auburn.
spread on that one?
What is it?
It was only 4.5 points. So
It's
that
the
one actually
Iron
really
Bowl is
surprised
I'll
me.
say, just that rivalry, right? Like, it's always crazy.
Yeah.
But also, I'll also add, like, Auburn trailed Mercer at one point in that game. So it
Yeah.
kind of shows you where the Tigers are at this year, too. And that's not mentioning, like, BYU losing UCF would somehow help. I don't think that's right. So this is a lot that he needs to go Utah's way. But at the end of the day, it starts with beating Kansas. But after this week, it will be transfer portal season because the college football calendar is wacky. And while we're all enamored with Devin Dampier and Bird Ficklin, Isaac Wilson just continues to kind of be here. How much longer is he going to be here? Doesn't feel like a lot. We're going to talk about it in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Utah Utes got their final regular season matchup this weekend, and they're big favorites here, 12.5 going against Kansas State. I like the Utes in this one. I think Utah bounces back from a poor performance defensively against Kansas State, but also over under 59.5. Both these teams offensively, if we look at how Utah's defense and especially Kansas' defense has played lately, could be in for the over there too. So however you're feeling, make sure you head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today. You can sign up at FanDuel.com and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends at Woodward. We're just going to say it. The fun per foot ratio at Woodward Park City is second to none. Located just 20 minutes from the Salt Lake Valley, Woodward offers experiential learning in a radically fun and safe environment with facilities for all abilities. The door is always open to first-timers and regulars alike. Bounce from parks to pits, ramps to tramps, and back again. Mountain Park season passes are now on sale for just $499. Rip hot laps with a posse after school and into the evening. Maximize mountain time this winter at one of the best terrain parks in Utah. All season long, looking to go all in? The All Access membership provides just that. From passes to perks, discounts, and even more. Just starting out, learn to fly with the Woodward Tribe in seasonal and multi-week programs that build skills and confidence in a Stoke-inspiring environment. Just 20 minutes from Salt Lake, Woodward offers experiential learning with facilities for all abilities. You can learn more at woodwardparkcity.com. What are you waiting for? Head to woodwardparkcity.com to learn more today. Matt, it doesn't feel like that long ago when we were all fired up when Isaac Wilson committed to the Utah Utes. Obviously, his brother had a ton of success at BYU, and getting Isaac after a really strong career at Corner Canyon, it seemed like he was going to be the next guy after Cam Rising, honestly. But unfortunately, he had to be the next man up for Cam Rising when Cam suffered his injury. He was thrust into action early and was clearly not ready. You look at that season that he played last year at Utah, completed just 56% of his passes, only averaged 6 yards per throw, sacked 19 times, 10 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. It just wasn't good. And his play was not good. Like we said a lot last year, one of the biggest issues Utah had was quarterback not delivering those throws when they needed to be there. So coming into this year, he was in a fight to be the backup quarterback. Obviously, you brought in Devin Dampier to be the starter. New offense, Jason Beck. And coming into the year, we were told at one point he actually had won the job over Bird Ficklin, but it was 1A, 1B. Obviously, Bird passed him up and then some as the year went on. It was an interesting situation there, but I'm looking at this now, and I'm like, and this isn't inside information saying, like, I have a source that says Isaac Wilson is going to transfer. This is this. Isaac Wilson entered the transfer portal last year. Isaac Wilson is a college football player. He probably wants to play football. I don't see how in the world he wants to stay at Utah when Devin Dampier probably coming back and going to be the starter. Bird Ficklin probably coming back to be the backup and still play some next year. I think Isaac Wilson's absolutely going to transfer out, and I think his time of Utah is up once the portal window opens up. How do you view the situation, Matt?
It's a hard one, actually. I get what you're saying, but I also look at it and I think, well, I think Wilson must have seen the writing on the wall at the beginning of this season, and that's why he initially entered the transfer portal, but then withdrew. And I have to wonder what caused him to withdraw. And if it's kind of something similar, if he still thinks he can develop and become better. I mean, you look at guys ahead of him Dampier, Ficklin, they won't be around long. Those are NFL type guys. They are extremely talented. And, Isaac Wilson has only gotten into one game this year against Colorado. And it was so interesting because both quarterbacks ahead of him, Ficklin looked fantastic when he came in. Dampier looked great. And then Wilson came in and everything just stopped, just like last year. It's just that hesitation that you could see. He had a few runs. He attempted one pass that almost got intercepted. And it was just the hesitation, just not going like the other two had figured out. And so I do wonder if that's an indication right there that his development still needs to just keep going. But it might be one of those things where, it would be better for him. Utah State's probably going to have an opening with Bryson Barnes being gone. There could be maybe an opportunity for him to develop in a way that he can get on the field sooner. But it just kind of depends on what Ficklin and Dampier end up doing.
Yeah, well, to me, like Devin, I think he's going to come back unless another transfer portal team is just like, ooh, let's throw a bunch of money at him. But with the way Dampier he's been good for Utah. He hasn't been transcendent. Like the biggest thing about this Utah's transcendent is their offensive line. That's the biggest reason they're blowing teams out is they're blowing them off the ball. It hasn't been Dampier. Like that's the best quarterback on the field, no matter who he's going against week in and week out. Honestly, in some ways, we thought he'd have a little bit better of a year than he's had. Part of that being the injury. So I don't see him getting plucked away from transfer portal, and he's not an NFL guy. The accuracy just isn't there. And I think Bird, this is the best system for him. Like some guys, it's like, ooh, they're not in the right system. If they were to go here, then they can elevate their skills. I think Bird Ficklin is absolutely in the best system and skill set for his needs. So I expect him to stay. So once again, if I'm Isaac, like you look, Dampier will be the starter next year. I think Bird would be the starter after that. If you're Isaac there, you're sitting on the bench a very long time. And then he's had this year to learn now, develop, hopefully grow his game and his talents a little bit. And hopefully can go have an opportunity at the G5 to play. Because like we said, Matt, I don't see an opportunity to play at Utah for at least 2 more full seasons. So literally it would be 3 years till he's the guy, barring some transfer shakeup. And if you're Isaac, I think you're going to want to play sooner than later, right?
Yeah, you do. But there's always that risk.
There's always that
risk. Not
risk.
always greener.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. I don't want to get there quite yet. But the one thing that'll be interesting too is, so Isaac probably going to transfer with the quarterback room as it is. The question then becomes, who else is going to transfer? Well, I think this Utah team's in a pretty good position. Will there be some surprises? Sure. Honestly, I'd be very concerned about losing Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu this offseason. As good as they were last year, they've been even better this year. We're losing them to the NFL draft. Like, had they been this year, next year is going to be their junior year. Bama, some of those other ones might just come in with the craziest offers ever, and we might be in danger of losing them. But I don't know. I don't see a ton of guys that Utah probably loses to the portal that are impact players. I think one that will be interesting is the wide receiver position. Obviously just hasn't panned out like we hoped it would. So Larry Simmons, Tobias Merriweather. And I'm not saying anything like, oh, these guys look unhappy. I'm just simply saying this hasn't gone to plan. And when things haven't gone to plan, sometimes with the transfer portal or when guys commit to your school, they sometimes hit the portal. So the one position group I do look at like, ooh, what would be a loss if they left? Potentially is receiver. If they want more opportunities in a more pass-heavy offense, I could potentially see some of the receivers looking to go somewhere else, but it'll be interesting to see. But overall, I do believe, Matt, that this Utah team is going to keep most of their impactful players as they've done for the most part since the portal's been a thing.
Yeah, and I think that there will be enough turnover, just natural turnover, guys graduating, guys going to the NFL, that there shouldn't be too big of a need. And as you see in past years, exactly what you were saying, it typically the guys that transfer are the guys that have already transferred once or twice before, and it still just didn't go the way they wanted to. We've got a couple of corners that came in, a couple guys in the secondary that haven't been able to get the playing time. You got some receivers. I was thinking there was a guy, Stevenson from Wyoming, hasn't gotten his opportunities. So yeah, there's going to be some guys that will hope to go find more opportunities. Or they may have already been, talked to and just said, hey, we're going to redshirt you and just next year will be your year. So yeah, but I don't see any big names. Like you said, there's always somebody that could get lured away by the money. But I think most guys appear to be happy. This team seems to be happy. Dampier brings a great energy as a leader to the team. So I don't think you're going to see too many guys that have a legitimate opportunity to start that take off.
I agree. One thing that'll be very interesting too is there's this whole looming NCAA fifth-year eligibility rule that could potentially pass. So some of these guys, we were hoping it would pass last year for Dorian Singer. Was a guy, obviously would have been awesome if he could have come back. But how many of these guys, like, and I don't know how that all works. Like, Ryan Davis is a redshirt senior. So does he have another year if that does pass? I don't entirely know that, but there are some of these guys I wonder, like, if they would, like, Jaron Comp's not going to have another year. He's been in this team for a very long time. I think he was actually like my high school class. Like, and I've been hosting this show for almost 4 years now. So that shows you how long he's been there. So not everyone's going to be able to come back, but some of these guys might. And I do think a couple of them will. So that'll be interesting to monitor as well. But for the players who are thinking about leaving, maybe might want to think again if you look at in terms of leaving to transfer. Maybe want to look at how the rest of the portal has panned out in the past for guys that have left Utah. Matt, you compiled a great list. I encourage you guys to check it out. It's on his Twitter, @Patton_Matt, of all the Utah players who transferred away from the team in 2025 to go somewhere else. It has all of their season stats of what they've done this season. And Matt, simply put, none of these guys, a very select few of these guys have gone on and had more success or even maintained the success they had with Utah after moving on. So it's a very risky thing to transfer. Grass ain't always greener on the other side, as you were hinting at just a few minutes ago, sir.
No, it's really not. And if you take a look at the list, it's unfortunate. There are a few guys that moved out and went to teams like San Jose State. I look at I always have a hard time saying it. Tafa Tofua went to San Jose State, and he's having a great year. 33 tackles, 4 sacks. He found the right spot for him. Fotu in Houston. That's another good one. 48 tackles, been a mainstay in their backfield. There's a few guys like that, but guys that decided to go to places like Alabama, like Cam Calhoun, not much time out there. I'd even say, this one people might argue, but I think Tanavasa really hasn't been as successful as I think BYU was expecting him to be, especially as the fans. They thought this was the big steal. He's done well, but he hasn't necessarily been a guy that's just completely made that defensive line, the powerhouse that people were expecting it to be. They're solid, but so I just think, you see it, you go look at these numbers, not much better. And in some cases, some people may have even really hurt their careers.
Yeah, Tommy Voss is an interesting one. I feel like he's, like you said, maybe he's maintained his level. Like, he's a really good player, really dominant force, has helped that BYU defense be fantastic this year. But I think in some ways we thought maybe coming into this year after last year, like, that's going to be one of the best defensive tackles, maybe not even the Big 12, maybe more. And I don't think he's been that. He's been a really good player for them. He's helped that defense become elite, but hasn't been transcendent. And it's, it's just interesting. We look at some of these guys, right? Like, and we're not trying to call any of these guys out, but we're just saying what it is. Like, Brandon Rose at the time, we thought maybe that's going to be a guy Utah misses. He has not lit the world on fire at UMass. Great to see Anthony Woods have a little more success at UCLA, but not like it's been outstanding for him on the year too. I wonder what has Mikey Matthews done this year there? Did you look that one up?
It's been a couple of years, huh? It's been a couple of years for him now. Yeah, he's done okay, but again, it's under 500 yards. Yeah.
Yeah, like Will Lyons, 10 receptions, 187 yards, 3 touchdowns, fine. Zacharias Williams, only the 3 catches for 80 yards too, and he's a little banged up, right? So that maybe is part of the reason why. But even like the tight ends that Utah lost, I look at Landon King's only got 182 yards, granted 4 touchdowns. Carson Ryan, 387 yards, 3 touchdowns, good for him. But Dallin Bentley actually does have more than that. Samote Pepa, just 4 tackles with Washington. You mentioned Calhoun already earlier. CJ Blocker, that was a good move for him. I don't know if he would have started amongst this group either. It's crazy thing. Like, I look back at some of that run. How about that running back room that Utah had? Like, when they brought in a Mike Mitchell, of course, he had the season-ending injury, but he's not with the Arizona program right now. Dejon Stanley, John Randall, fine. Like, both those guys under 400 yards on the season. Same thing for Jalen Glover. He's under 400 yards on the season. Like, none of these guys have transferred. Well, for the most part, none of these guys have transferred, and it's like, wow, what a great move for him. He's taken over. He's lighting the world on fire. It's just so few and far between the guys that do that it really is something. Like, I know you may feel like things are so bad here, I'm going to transfer and they'll be so much better. But we have years of data now, Matt, because we've been doing this for a couple of years now, talking about this, where it's not always the best option. Sometimes the best path isn't just change and start over. Sometimes it's stick it out, go through the hard times, and earn your opportunity, a la a Dallin Bentley, who we just mentioned. I never thought Dallin Bentley was going to do what he's done this year, but he stuck it out with this program and has made the most of his opportunity. And I think more guys need to do that in the portal era, or else we're going to continue to have guys where it's just like, oh, he transferred there. I totally forgot about him. What's he doing? Not a ton. Not a ton.
Development is so key, and I'm glad you actually brought up Mikey Matthews, because I pulled him up now and just looking at it, and Utah, he had 261 yards in that freshman year, and then he transfers to Cal, 272 yards. Then he transfers to UCLA, 310 yards. So he's just staying flat, and he's not developing because he's having to learn a new system each season, and he's not, he has to build rapport with new quarterbacks every year. Whereas, he was a starter as a freshman at Utah, and had he stayed, think about just how much more he would have developed. And you look at that, and that's one of the tragedies of the transfer portal.
I think Zacharias Williams would have been one of the best, would have arguably been Utah's leading receiver this year.
Yeah.
I think Cameron Calhoun would honestly have a chance to have been maybe not a first-team Big 12 guy, but I do believe one of the best defensive backs in the Big 12. And like I said, Tanu Vasa, maybe the same. Maybe he'd be a little better at Utah. Who's to say there? But it's just the reminder. We don't bring this up to pile on these guys. It's never what we're trying to do. It's just a reminder of just like hey, when you're looking at, especially if you're a Utah player listening to the show, which I'm sure you're tuning out the noise as Kyle Whittingham would like you to do, and you're probably not. But if you are, like, just think about some of these stories and just like, man, it's crazy how few of these guys actually go on and have more success than if they had rather stayed. It's just something to keep in mind. So it's going to be interesting to see, too. It's going to be interesting to see what Utah brings in through the portal, Matt. Got to believe they'll be looking at another wide receiver come next week. I know they just kind of refuse to do it most years. You have got to bring in trench talent. This Utah team, they've added one offensive lineman and one defensive lineman in the portal the last couple of years that I could think of, or one defensive tackle, one offensive lineman. Like, to me, with how much we're losing, and especially last week, how badly your defensive tackles got abused. Like, when Witt's talking about, we had issues in the A-gap, those are your defensive tackles a lot of the time. I think they got to add more in the trenches there, too. Potentially bringing in another linebacker. I think Jonathan Hall and Trey Reynolds have, last week was also not the greatest game for Jonathan Hall, and there's not going to be Lander Barton. DeMooney helped out a little bit last week, too. So those are probably the biggest positions that I bring up for portal need-wise. Are there some other ones that stand out to you that Utah needs to add this cycle?
No, those were the exact ones I was thinking about. Yep, linebacker is going to be thin. Offensive line is going to be really thin. Yeah. And defensive line. I like the freshmen they brought in at D-line, and I think there's a good chance you'll see one or maybe two of those guys get some real opportunities next year. You also had a lot of injuries. Kafusi, I think, has been out for a little while. So, yeah, but it sure would help to bring in a little more strength there, and the trenches are so important. So I think you gotta look there first before anything else.
And it's also not a guarantee. Like, even if you do have sometimes freshman to sophomore year, you don't do a ton, then you make the leap. Caleb Bomu. Like, Dallas Vakalahi is a guy this year. I think Dallas has been a good player for this Utah team. But I think there was some hope there, like, he might take a sophomore leap with how good he was as a freshman. He looks like he's gotten a little better, but it's not a transcended player. So, like, it's just not guaranteed that guys make that jump, make that leap. So it's going to be interesting to see how Utah navigates all this, especially because they could be navigating a coaching change as well. Obviously, they have their next man up, but we'll see what Kyle Whittingham opts to decide to do. But right now, the focus is going into this Kansas game this week. And in the meantime, Matt, please let everyone know where they can get more Utah football information out.
Yeah. utenation.com, or you can find me on Twitter at Patton_Matt.
Matt, appreciate making the time, my friend. Thank you.
Absolutely.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. We'll be back with you tomorrow reacting to where Utah's at in the CFP rankings. Drop your guys' predictions below, and we look forward to seeing you again on tomorrow's Locked On Utes.